Hi, this is Leslie. We're having a UCWN meeting at Victoria Gardens, and we're all just gathering, waiting for the program to begin. Sit tight. See, I should have the camera this way. This is better, isn't it?
That's better.
See some people you know?
Yes, I see Carrie Beth Moskowitz. And I see Maxine and Claudia. And Judith Kerman. And Arlene Gould. And also
It's time to start the program.
What's her name? One who's the artist. Yeah.
You have that your phone?
The nice
Well, I'm
house.
on Zoom. Carol.
Yay. Well, everyone doesn't look like they're in their woolies.
I can't hear you. Let's see. Hold on. I'm trying to fix the audio. Can you hear me, Carol?
Perfectly.
Yes?
Yeah, perfect.
Give me a thumbs up. Thumbs up. All right.
Yeah.
I gotta be this way. You made it. How are you?
There's Deborah Ramsden. I see Deborah Ramsden.
What? It's Friday. Yeah, I don't know. I'm afraid nobody's gonna come. It's just like I'm gonna have a birthday party and nobody's gonna.
Hello, my darlings. Hello. We're going to start the program. Yay!
That's okay.
Our board of directors, and I encourage everybody to consider participating. Either as a volunteer or board member. So we continue the good things that's going on with lots of help and participation and collegiality. So we're going to. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Gloria Waslin. Hello. And I am the current president. Yay!
Yay.
And I'd like to introduce the vice president, Sheila Gould.
Yay!
Thanks for coming. And our treasurer and past president, Leslie.
Yay!
Amazing. She's been wanting to get off the board, but we can't do without her. So she's doing Zoom right now, and we want to make sure everybody can hear everything. So let me know if you can't hear. Tonight,
Could you welcome our new first-time guest and new members?
Tonight is a special night because we're able to gather in person as well as Zoom. We've been doing Zoom because of the COVID issue. And this is really a glorious night because it was rainy and cold this morning, but
Looks beautiful.
So it's a perfectly fitting thing. Sheila identified the most amazing speaker and venue to encourage us to leap into spring. And so check it out. Sheila will talk about introducing Victoria, whose place this is, but I also want to acknowledge people who have been on the board. And Seidel has been a past president.
I survived.
I survived. You survived. And
Melody.
Melody, who founded the Ulster County Women's Network out of the Shandaken Women's Network. We are toasting to Melody. So she had this beautiful garden people have come to the events at her home. And it's a pleasure that we're having this venue because it's very reminiscent, and I know Melody is happy in her heart that we're among the flowers. So thank you very much. And Sheila, may I ask you to introduce Victoria?
Yes. Do you have anything else you need to say? Or are you going to do that at the end?
What would you like to say?
Just
don't know,
welcome
do-
the
Any-
first-time guests and friends.
First
and-
of all,
Introduce
who are
Victoria.
members here? Raise their hands. Okay. So
And
about
everybody
50
else is welcome
and
to
they're
join.
guests. Okay. So that's great.
How do you resign? I know my membership probably.
Well, you can renew.
Oh,
And anybody who's a guest, we'd love to have you join. And we're going to do more things in person, hopefully, outside. So that'll be terrific. And see each other again.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Well, I can't thank Victoria enough for having us here. Let me tell you a little bit about Victoria. A lot was on the website. If you didn't read it, go back and read her bio. It's long and great. But when I first moved up here, I went to Garden Day at Cornell Cooperative at the SUNY New Paltz campus. And it's a wonderful thing that they've had every year. This year, it's going to be a little different. But my first year I went because I bought this big house with tons of gardens. She's yet to get there to really start the work. And I saw this incredible, all these different courses. And I saw Victoria Coyne, Victoria Gardens lecturing, and everything that she was teaching were all things that I wanted to learn and know. And I signed up continuously every year for her courses. And then, of course, my first visit was to come over here in person and see this incredible shop and nursery, and to get to know the people, and everyone that worked here are fabulous. And so Victoria's been doing this for what, 30 years now? You don't want to do that?
Not even that old.
36 years. It's still
36
going.
years as Victoria.
So we love women who are still working and running their own businesses. And that makes me so proud and happy. And so from the moment I met her, I just fell in love with her givingness, her knowledge about plants and gardening, the way she works with people individually, whether it's a small pot for your house to an enormous landscaping job. She has a fabulous crew. And so she's kind of I think you're the Maven of Ulster County to me. And so when I asked her to do this, I thought she's going to say no 1,000 times because she's so busy and we're just getting outside. And she graciously gives her time to everyone and said, sure. And even wanted us to come here and not just do it on Zoom. So this is the first time we're doing Zoom for people at home, but we're so happy that you all could be here. And I hope she'll launch us into getting our hands in the dirt and forgetting about our problems in the world, because gardening is the best. Thank you, Victoria. You're welcome.
Well, of course, how many of you have not been here? Yeah. How do I get that to happen? Right?
You just did. You just did.
Yeah, happily to have you here. As I always say to people, the first trip is the hardest. It's much easier to come the
Carol's
second time.
sound quality is good.
What we have,
Sound quality,
that it's unique,
the sound is good.
good.
Wonderful. Thank
Okay.
you.
I love
It's
your
really
answer.
great.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Which we also do I do the garden show pretty often on Sunday morning there. If you don't know about it, there's a great garden show on WKZ, which is 98.1 at 8 o'clock in the morning. Sally Spillane hosts every week, different people with her. I get to do it so often that people think it's my garden show.
Do you want to come back here?
Hi, welcome. So a little bit of history. I went to Ulster County Community College. I had moved to Ulster County right out of high school, got a job in a nursery, thought that was what I wanted to do. The community college had a horticulture program, went to the horticulture program, and a dear friend of mine was doing what I do. She gardened, she had a landscape gardening company, and she had, who I met at college, and she had clients, and she said, I need employees. So I was her first employee, worked for her for 5 years. And then I had met my husband in between, and I wanted to expand beyond what she wanted. And he said, go for it. You know, I have a job, take a risk. So luckily for me, he did that. At that point, we landscaped out of wherever we lived. I started the business. I lived in an apartment, and then we built a house. And then in 2003, really 2002, I got the crazy idea that I thought retail would be a good way to expand the business. This building, which there is a slideshow that runs inside, was a cement block building with the roof collapsed into it.
Wow.
I do not know how we convinced each other. Yes, that's the project we want to take on. He was very, very talented and could do anything he put his mind to. He did the total renovation. The only thing he didn't do is he didn't put the shingles on the roof. He didn't hang the sheetrock, because you should always have a rocker hang sheetrock. And he didn't put the big windows in, but he did everything else. Unfortunately, he had a stroke in 2012 and is no longer with us. So, but he's here in spirit. And I always say this is my Taj Mahal that he built here and did a fabulous job. I don't know if you noticed the two maples that hold the roof up are maples right from the property that we cut down, and that is what holds the roof up. Very unique. We came up here to this spot and it was somewhat flat, and I said, well, that's where I'll put the nursery. And he started to flatten it and clear it off and expose this piece of bedrock. He said, oh, you know, so the whole, you're sitting on gravel. This is really the only spot that there is in bedrock here. That is a New Scotland limestone. It is, ready for this number, 375 million years old.
Wow.
And we date it from the fossils. There's one particular fossil, and if a 5-year-old comes in here, they are miserable until we point out the fossils, and then they don't want to leave. So it's one of the things, and I will pass this around because I found this today, is there are shell pockets in the limestone. So you'll see, and this is what comes out of them. And if you look at this carefully, you'll see that this is really like a very soft stone, not even stone, full of shells that are 375 million years old. So that is pretty unbelievable. So we, as a company, retail, we are open from really March 1st to the January 1st, though through COVID, because people were so crazy for houseplants, we were open on the weekends in the winter time. We'll see if that continues next winter, or we're all out of here and happy to get a real big break, which I got. My staff didn't get it all. But the real mainstay of the business is landscape gardening. That piece has been happening since 1986. And so I don't know if you guys noticed the staff coming in and out, but the crew came back at 6 o'clock. They do a fantastic job. Right now they're on spring cleanup, so we start installs really soon. If any project starts with us, it starts with a consultation with me. So that's how, if you wanted to be a client, you'd schedule a consultation. I pulled some plants today that I thought I would talk about, things that are a little unusual that you might not know about. If you have any questions for me at all, just yell out. I mean, it's very casual here. At this point, when I say the crew are doing the cleanups, what they're doing is they're going in, cutting back what needs to be cut back, putting edges on all the gardens, mulching, and doing any pruning of things that bloom in the fall. So no pruning of anything that blooms in the spring at this moment. That's all after July. So lilacs, rhododendrons, anything that blooms before July 1st, you prune after 4th of July. Anything that blooms after July 1st, you prune it now. Hi, how are you? That's okay. So one of the things today started out rainy and then it got gorgeous. And one of the first things when I walked out here this afternoon was the activity of the bees.
Yeah.
So I am not someone who's exclusively native at all. That wasn't something they taught us in college. It wasn't even part of the vocabulary 40 years ago. This plant, and here's a bee visiting it just to show that they love it so much. This is Andromeda pyrrhus. It is our #1 deer resistant shrub. So one of the things that we do very strongly is we promote deer resistant plants. And so we divide the nursery, and the nursery gets divided right down this line. And this side of the nursery is all deer resistant shade. And then in the back, deer resistant sun. And then shade. So all the hostas are over there. And then evergreens and sunny deer resistant. We also have a wet spot that there is a spring that happens to run down right here, but that spot has things that like it wet. This does not like it wet. This is dry shade plant. Doesn't want to be in full sun, but is happy to be under a maple tree, which is the driest shade that we have. And it even smells good. It does. It's one of those things, though. Some people think it smells good, and then so one of the things that I'm really known, and if you know me at all, you know this, is that I love hellebores. This one is Ivory Prince. It's a hellebore, and this one is Ivory Prince. Very, very deer resistant, shade loving. You want to plant them somewhere that you walk by in March, because that's when they start blooming. You do not want them in a shade garden that you don't visit until July. You want them right near your front door. And this flower here is the faded flower. So that it does open white, but this looks pretty fantastic. And it will look like this for months. It'll look like this in July even. The foliage will get very beat up through the winter, but it is evergreen until the spring. The spring you remove the foliage, which is part of what my crew is doing now. But you have to be very careful because the buds are right there.
Is there a native variety?
I do not think so. I do not think so.
Read something somewhere.
Yeah, and again, native is not how I learned them, but extremely deer resistant. You may have noticed, or you might notice on the way out, if it's not dark, we have some planted under the little king birches that are right outside. Those we transplanted this spring because we did a bunch of work on the parking lot and they were in the way. And they happily transplanted right up onto that bank. That's a great position for them because their flowers do tend to hang down. So if you can put it on a bank so that you can see it, the better. The bees are all over these things. Another great pollinator plant, and early, because they're starving now. The Forsythia is doing nothing for them. Forsythia is sterile, does nothing for the bees. If you're trying to have a pollinator garden, do not plant Forsythia. If you want something that does bloom yellow, at this point, there's spice bush and cornus moss, which is a native dogwood shrub, small tree. Another early bloomers is this azalea. This is a deciduous azalea, cornus pink. Will get to be not too big a shrub, 3.5 feet, maybe 2.5 feet wide, not deer resistant. Has fabulous, the deciduous azaleas have fabulous fall color. So for me, if a plant gives me 2 or 3 seasons, then I'm happy with it. If it gives us 1 season, I'm not a big fan. So, things like Forsythia, because not only doesn't it do anything for the pollinator, but it also doesn't give us really any fall color. It doesn't have great structure. It doesn't have peely bark. It doesn't have any other attribute than, oh, happy that it's April.
Well, that's a good attribute.
Yes, it is. But I think that things like there's other things to be had for that. Fleeting Heart, a lot of you, if you do garden, you might know it. This form is a yellow form. It might look sick to some of us, but this is, what is the variety? Golden Heart. And will be just like the traditional bleeding hearts, get pretty big. I think it's pretty stunning with the peachy stem and that bright yellow. Bright yellow is a color that I use a lot because especially in the shade, it pops. It really brings its own light. Do you have moles or voles or chipmunks? Yeah. Yeah. Or if it's a little too wet, that will also rot it because they have kind of tuberous roots. So, but this is an ephemeral, so it's going to come up big, almost like a subshrub, as I would call it, and then die back to the ground. So in July, when it starts to look like it's dying, that's exactly what it's supposed to be doing. It's supposed to go dormant. So these guys, which this is a plant that it doesn't really market itself very well because it doesn't look like much. This is Virginia bluebell, another ephemeral, really deer resistant, really a fantastic plant. If you can get this established, you're gonna have 20 plants. And it is Virginia bluebell. It is really worth planting. I bring it in and we try to get in the ground as fast as possible for clients because otherwise it's an empty pot in a couple of months. But it still is, you can plant the empty pot and still get it back in the spring. And it will really grow out. You will get a nice stand of them and they are just beautiful. Blue is one of those colors that is so hard to find in nature that any blue we celebrate. It is a fabulous plant.
And what is like sunshade?
Shade deer resistant. Yep, it's right here next to you, shade deer resistant. So
That's the same thing?
yep, yeah, nope, right behind you there. See it there with the big leafy, lettucey leaves. So peonies are another thing that is very deer resistant. And I have two different forms here, not the herbaceous form that we all know and love that our grandmothers grew and can live for 100 years. This one is a tree peony. So when I was in college, our professor couldn't find a picture of a tree peony and he showed us the stems. Well, the stems are nothing, but they look like gnarly. Like we were like, what? Well, this flower is going to be this. And even in bud here, you guys can see these gorgeous buds are just magnificent. Yes, I will put it up on the table. They tend to be madly expensive. You got it okay, Sheila? Anybody want to walk around? Oh, what a deal. Yeah. Yeah, they can get big. I once went to a job site and the client said, oh, we have this rhododendron in the backyard that just blooms beautifully, but we don't really know what it is. And I walked back and it was a tree peony that was 6 feet tall. And it must have had 100 flowers on it. So they're gonna be the first peony to open. It's huge.
Do they have the same scent as the little herbaceous?
Not as much. And I think that each one is different.
But
Not that classic. That smells like my grandma. Like that herbaceous peonies are really.
But are they deer resistant?
Yes. Yes.
all the same way to begin really
No, because they're woody. So and the flower is not as heavy as a peony. So it's more like a cross between a peony and a poppy. So it's more late. It's not as heavy petals.
That's a
Tree peony. Yeah, and I think that we might have two, but this might be the only one.
How do they get?
Well, that one that I saw in Westchester was 6 feet tall. How tall is yours?
Mine is about this tall.
Yeah, and I just saw one in Dutchess County this weekend, and it was like that. It was like 4.5 feet tall. it had 25 buds on it. Like it's, I just think it's one of the most beautiful things. Even
But I
in buds.
noticed that it does get chomped on a little bit by the hungry deer at a certain point.
Well,
Everything gets
For-
chomped on.
yeah. So the deer resistant situation is they eat what their mothers taught them, right? So if they think your garden is a buffet and their mom has taught them to come in and browse, and it's heavy browsing. So I have clients in Kingston on Pearl Street who have 15 deer in their yard at night. Well, they're gonna eat her peonies because they're gonna eat everything. But they tend to leave it alone. So we say not any deer proof, never say deer proof because nothing is deer proof,
Right.
and deer resistant.
Deer resistant, because there comes a point in time where they're
Right.
jump.
So we really find spray to work great. The spray we love is deer defeat. It lasts for 3 weeks. And so that's really,
Deer defeat.
yes, deer defeat. I like it better than deer fence. I find deer fence to be outrageously stinky, where deer defeat is somewhat stinky. You need to move it. Yeah, they want to be in the sun.
Do they come in colors other than red?
Yes, red, pink, yellow, white. A lot of times where you'll find your biggest selection, unfortunately, is online. Yes,
I want to check this deer defeat. You say 3 weeks through all kinds of rain too? That's-
not a hurricane,
No, but like.
and maybe not last week.
Yeah, but, yeah,
But-
so you don't have to reapply.
We
after
don't have,
time.
that's part of why we love it,
Yeah.
because we're not on the job sites every week.
Yeah, that's fine.
So this one is another, this is a cross between a tree peony and this one's yellow. And it's a cross between a tree peony and a herbaceous peony. And this blooms after the herbaceous peonies. So that one's before, this one's after. In Japan, they put up little umbrellas over the top.
Oh, of course they do.
So one of our things, another thing I really love, not deer resistant, are the colored coral bells. So when they first brought these on the market, they sort of rushed them to the market, and a lot of, we were buying them and they weren't perennial. So the secret is to get one that has the American, because these are a native plant, and to have the American parentage in it, and they come back. And so that's what I stock, is I stock ones that have the American heritage. There's even some here now that are blooming, so they're one of the first things to start blooming. Shade, yes. They could take some sun, but I wouldn't put them in a hot bakey place. I would definitely give them a break from the hottest afternoon sun. And when we talk about sun and shade, if the shade is in the morning and you have a sunny afternoon, that is a sunny position. If the shade is in the afternoon, that is a shady position. Yes, the afternoon sun is hotter. This is and I love that I can get some of these things. We do have allium that are in pots as well. This is Camasia. This is a spring flowering bulb that normally you can only buy as bulbs, but this grower does pot up these spring flowering bulbs. Again, it's blue and it likes it wet, which is really unique for a bulb. Most bulbs would rot away if it was wet. This one will stand a wet position. So you have a low border that there's a wet spot. This is a great choice for it. Camasia. Yeah. And it will make it naturalizes, it's deer resistant, it can take the wet. So like very unique things for it. It will spike, a blue spike, and it's show stopping when it does that. And we do have a lot of these back in deer resistant sun.
So it's a spike rather than a.
Yes, it's a spike rather than an allium is a ball. And we do have some of them, but this one is a spike. And one's sort of a pale, I think I have two varieties of this. One's a pale blue and one's more of sapphire blue or royal blue more, I would say. Another great plant that I love, deer resistant, Jacob's ladder. This was something that my grandmother grew, not this variety. This variety in particular is Stairway to Heaven. Yep. They have now come up. They have come up with more varieties with this pink foliage, but I think it looks great with that pink foliage. And the idea of this kind of combination is really beautiful. So that's really, we try to set the nursery up in these vignettes. When we started retailing, first of all, I don't know how to set a nursery up like a grocery store, because why would you? I don't understand. When you have this palette, why wouldn't you set it up like a garden? That's one of the things that makes us very unique, and bringing things together into their what they like to grow, and makes it easier to shop it too.
What are the conditions for the ladder?
For the Jacob's ladder, shady, deer resistant.
Wet, dry?
Not really dry. It's not one of the dry loving plants. So not under a sugar maple, which if anyway you have tried to garden under a sugar maple, you know the roots jump right up into your mulch. Like it just, the roots just come right up. This guy, and this is something that I try to get people to do all the time, is a blueberry. It's a huckleberry, a little blueberry. These are fabulous shrubs. We should all put them in our garden, whether we love blueberries or not. They have great structure. They look even, this is all in bud, which I think is very interesting. This one's going to stay short. Has a beautiful flower, beautiful berry, fabulous fall color. Like just knock your socks off, blueberry fall color. They have done a ton of work in the blueberries, that there's now some that have sort of dusty blue foliage through the year too, which I think we have a couple of those over there.
But orange, don't those like say, do you come over here?
Probably. They're not in deer resistant. But it depends on how heavy your deer are. But yeah. And
When is the best time to plant?
any minute you can dig a hole. And you can plant. Yes. Oh yeah. We planted a full-on garden yesterday.
Wow.
Yes, we did and we're gonna plant another one on Thursday.
And
So,
even if it gets frost,
right, everything out here is hardened off. You're not putting marigolds in. I don't have one for you to buy. You're not gonna put any annuals in until after May 1st, at least.
Is it too early for onions or leeks?
No, though I'm not the best vegetable gardener, because I've never had one.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
How could I ever have time to keep my own vegetable garden? I'm lucky if I could stop at the farmer's market and get what I need. So I don't do we hardly do any food even for our clients. It's just not part of what we do. It's not something that I have ever done, so I don't know a lot about it. Yeah, I mean, people who know, they know. And I have friends that I call. Yeah. Yeah. So a couple other great plants. This is Tiarella. This is a shade-loving plant. One of the first times I saw this plant was at Winterthur in Pennsylvania, and it was a ground cover, and it smelled so delicious. I had no idea that it was scented till there were 100 plants in front of me. Will be like a little runner. You can see the foliage is quite pretty, full of buds here. It'll be a little pinky white flower on it. Tiarella. How big does it get? Not knee high. It can, yes. Yep. Nope, shade. I find it to be somewhat deer resistant. Right now they're over there in the shade because we're still having a debate between the staff about whether it's deer resistant or not. And you will see things over, like there's echinacea over in the sun wall. They are not deer resistant. Their tags all say they're deer resistant. They are not. They will eat every flower off of them. That is not a deer resistant plant.
Was this last one a native?
The Tiarellas
Yeah.
is, yep. And there's a cross that are Tiarellas, that they've crossed the coral bells and the Tiarellas. And they have made another set of plants, which I think this one here, I think this guy is a Tiarella. With this fabulous. I think this is Sweet Tea is the name of this guy. Again, not there is. Yes.
I don't have deer, but I have a lot of bunnies.
Yeah, bunnies and woodchucks, they're like goats. They'll just eat everything. Though I do find that the deer defeat helps with the bunnies. It doesn't necessarily help with those woodchucks because they
Kitty litter, yes, use kitty litter. Kitty litter.
with the woodchucks. I've tried. I've tried so many things. I have one client who's a great client, and he's been my client for almost the whole time I've been in business. And there's always a woodchuck under his potting shed, and we cannot get rid of that woodchuck. And we have put kitty litter, and we have done this whole like take paste from wall paste and bird seed. It's that woodchuck has a gut of steel. But he does not eat the hosta when we spray it with deer defeat. But he's still there. He's really in
He loves the bunnies.
They're bad.
So
They're
the
bad.
spray works in the hosta for deer?
Yes. And it's on Lighted Road in Stone Ridge. So you can imagine how heavy his browsing is. And it's a part-time house. There's like nobody there 5 days a week. So, and he's hardly there now, even on the weekends. So the fact that if we were able to keep those hostas till October 1st, and then we stopped and we let the deer browse them down, because why not? Why not let them work for us? So anybody know what this is? Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. And there's something that they sell as perennials. They're not really so much perennials. They're a little, it's a lupin.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And great plant to have. It blooms with the irises and the peonies and has that spike. But don't think that it's going to be perennial. It somehow wants to be in like a meadow in Maine. Like we're just not hard. We don't have a tough enough garden. The rich gardens are really not that easy for them. This one is a Trollius, another wetland plant. I just love these buds on this, and it'll have this bright yellow flower. Trollius. I don't have my glasses on, so Trollius. Trollius. I think that yes, it can take some shade. I don't know that I would consider it deer resistant. It isn't an ephemeral. It's going to show up and disappear, and it'll come on. The stems will get up like this kind of height on it. Yes. 10,000. Epimedium is, and so not to walk away from them. They don't look like much at the minute. So, this is, so along with Andromeda, the first shrub I showed you, this is the deer resistant, shade loving, dry plant. This one is Fine Tingler. There's some guy who probably is a medical doctor who's like hybridizing these guys, and they all have like crazy like names like that. This is last year's foliage. So I would cut that off if we come to it in the garden, and then it will re-flush out. It has this really cool sort of wiry flower on it. This is a pink form. There's a lot of different forms of it. So it has a heart-shaped leaf with a wiry stem, loves the dry shade. Long, long, long-lived perennial. And like a peony is. Say that again? Epimedium. 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 And I probably have, there's probably 10 different forms of it here because we use it all the time. The other thing that we use all the time is this bright yellow grass that has just started to really, I use, that is almost as much a signature plant for me as the hellebores are, in that that is a little weeping forest grass, about knee high, stays behaved, does not get big, does not, no.
Is it like sunshine?
It is Japanese. No, what's the shape?
And the name of that one?
That is Japanese forest grass. And so there's two different forms of it that we have here. One is all yellow and one is striped. That's the brown. And this is the all yellow form. About knee high, and then it just weeps over. Really easy, low maintenance, really reliable. That the deer really do leave it alone. It does tend to be pricey because that's probably a 5-year-old plant. Yeah, they do take a little while to, the hellebores are the same way. That's why they're pricey, because that hellebore, wherever I should, this one is probably a 5-year-old plant. So they will reseed, which is really kind of fantastic. And then it will take 5 years to be something, because they're just a little. Sure. Yep.
Sheila needs to call the restaurants at, what is it, Northern,
The spy.
the Spy.
I just want to see if we have a head count.
We have to have a head
You know,
count, so we
we
can
can
let
try
them
this
know.
for
So if
dinner.
everybody who's going to dinner, raise your hands. So
Raise your hand up high so we can see it.
Are we?
Are we going for dinner? No?
Yeah, I'm going.
You could change your mind on your way out. Nothing
Yeah,
happens.
looks
Just
like
down the
5.
road.
looks like fine.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
6.
okay.
Maxine.
Yes, yes.
It's
No, the
now
other
both spine. Just right
Ah,
now.
Maxine, I mean Francine. We're going home.
So does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned pollinators. What about ones that attract butterflies and birds?
So lots of those things, because butterflies are here in summer, or summer blooming. Bee balm, Russian sage, calamint. There's a ton of deer resistant plants that the butterflies like. The good way to know whether the butterfly is going to like it is, can the butterfly land on it? Right? So the coral bell, you can't really land on it if you're a butterfly, because it's not going to work out. But things like yarrow, bee balm, those things that they can land on, they're going to use.
Okay.
One of my most favorite plants, and it's out there's a big one out right across the driveway here. It's a large shrub, small tree, multi-stemmed. It's called Seven Suns. Its Latin is Hippocaudium. I have 2 different forms in the nursery now. One that gets that big and one that stays smaller, which is the smaller one is new. I only got introduced to it last year. That blooms in August with a white scented flower that you can smell the flower here when it's blooming out there. And the pollinators and the butterflies adore it. When you walk up to it in August, it is just full, like you can hear and it's every kind of bee. It's the bumblebees and the little native bees and the honeybees and the butterflies. There could be 20 monarchs out there.
And which plant is that?
It's called Seven Suns, Hippocaudia. It's a small tree, large shrub. The smaller one is going to go 8 to 10. The big one is probably close to 30 feet. So, but I almost put that, I put that almost at an every drop site, because something that blooms in August is rare, especially for a shrub or a tree. Plethora? Yeah. Sweet shrub? Yes. Another great pollinator plant. Another wetlands. You do see it. It is a native. You'll see it. Swamp side. I know it's up at Minnewaska. I've seen it up there next to the lake. it's a great plant. It doesn't look like much now, which kind of always makes me unhappy.
How hard do you cut it back?
You can cut that pretty hard. Yeah. My mom had one at the Cape House, and we would really take it in half because it was getting sort of into the view every summer. So we would take it waist high, and then it would get above my head again. Take it down again. So you can really.
What about mountain laurel? I have one beautiful one that for the last 6-7 years has been gorgeous, and this year the deer ate it off.
So they will.
And
They
never
did.
did before.
Yeah. Well, it is about them
I mean,
discovering.
it's right next to the house. It's
Right.
just
Yeah.
about there.
It's a lot of native plants, and this is one of my problems with everybody wanting to go native.
Mhm.
That is deer food.
Yeah,
That is what they've been eating
that's right.
for centuries. So,
Yeah. Why am I surprised?
right. But Mount Laurel is one of those things that's hard to plant and get happy. It likes like no soil. It wants to be growing on the mountaintop. Wants to be really wet now and then dry in August. Like it just is one of those things that's not really what you make a garden be. So it is putting it in spots
Yeah.
that it will like that it will get what it gets natively. But
Can you
there-
show me what that looks like?
Mount Laurel,
Beautiful white
Yeah, take a
flower.
walk.
Anybody else want wine? I'll serve. Raise your hand.
Anybody wants some wine?
Oh, yeah.
so this is a Mount Laurel. Very similar to Andromeda, right? But it's gonna have like a flower that's like origami. It's very pretty flower. Blooms in June.
I have an old quarry site that I live on. so it's well done.
Yeah, and it's shady. You gotta give it some shade. It does need some shade. But it is, this grower in particular with these green pots is a small family-owned nursery. And I love this because for them, I'm always able to get shrubs in small pots like this, which makes it very affordable. This is $27. I could also get trees in small pots from them. They got really bought out during the pandemic, so there's a lot I couldn't get from them this year, but I know they'll recover. But I always can get from, this is Summerhill is the company that grows these. I call them the car trunk trees. So that's a tree that you can stick in your trunk and take home. So I love having that kind of material available, having small things so people can start small and you can support young gardeners who have very limited budgets. And so any other questions for me?
Yeah, behind you.
Okay.
I'm gonna bring up a negative topic after all this gorgeous stuff. What are we up against in terms of invasives this year that we really have to watch out for?
Smart.
And how do we deal with it?
Smart.
Still grass is definitely an issue. It is not, it's best thing is to pull it, mulch. When we have a really, still grass, I feel like, yes, it gets everywhere, but it's really easy to pull out. Yes, it is. It is a major invasive. If people don't know it, it's that bright green grass that we're gonna see in a month from now, and it's everywhere. A lot of times you will see it where a wheeled vehicle went through the woods because it throws seeds and the tires stay spreading. My biggest pet peeve is barberry. Take it out, take it out. Even though I'm like looking up there and there's way too much of it that has volunteered up the hill here, it is a tick nursery. Don't have it in your yard. It's not like every client who I've tried to convince to take them out, when I drop the tick nursery thing, it's gone. So you do not want something thorny at your front door. You do not want it next to your sidewalk, and you gotta walk past it and brush. That's how ticks get on you. They just jump. You don't have to be spending a lot of time outside to end up with a tick on you. The worst is that you're not spending a lot of time outside and you get the tick on you and you don't know. And you don't know that.
And that comes from Peonies?
The barberries, I don't know why they use it. They don't have big brains, so we can't ask. But but for those berries probably too, because the barberry has a berry that they might feed on. So right.
So we should tear out the barberries.
You should tear out.
Yeah, my neighbors.
They're fun.
Do you
Mine
think
never
a
did
deer
well.
defeat would work against skunks that like to nest under my desk?
I think it would be worth a try.
Because I bought something that's just awful. I
Yeah,
don't want to spray it.
I think it would be worth a try. And my crew did tell me that they might have taken the last bottle out of the store today, so I can check in the back bay and make sure that's true. But we normally have to put all of it in stock. I've never used it.
That's the bone light, the natural.
Got through the winter.
All the deer sprays are organic. They're all are egg white. Nobody uses chemicals. Zero waste.
What about this worm thing? What's going on?
Oh, those worms.
Jumping.
So she's asking about the Asian jumping worm.
Yeah.
So earthworms didn't exist in the North America until the Europeans brought them. So all earthworms are invasive for us. The problem with the Asian jumping worm is that it eats the duff in the forest. I think that's really more of a problem, and that it's going to make the soil so rich and so coffee groundish that trees could fall over. Will that happen? I think that sycamore its roots are deep enough that it's not going to fall over. But they're pretty disgusting. But they're everywhere. I think it's one of those things that you just.
Does anything eat them?
I do not think so. What they're saying is collect them and put them in a can. But I can't imagine. I think it's one of those things that would be very hard to battle. So I'm ignoring it.
But our other earthworms are okay.
The first time I heard it, I was talking to my friend Andrew Kern, who was the head gardener at Mohawk for 20 years. And I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, is that guy saying something about an invasive earthworm? And that was 10 years ago.
So Victoria, we have just a few more minutes before we wrap it up. So if anybody has a last question, this would be the time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Come back. The registers are open. I can ring you up if you want to take something home.
Victoria, can I get a picture of you with everybody behind you?
I wanted to say also, Victoria does amazing garden tours, so get on her website, follow everything that she's doing, and you can check into her schedule because they are phenomenal. And come back and buy plants.
Yes.
There is a garden tour that I'm helping organize that the Rosendale Library is doing.
Wait, before you leave, let me get a group shot.
Cheryl's
Yvonne?
gonna be- Oh, Cheryl's doing it?
Yeah.
Yvonne? Wait one second.
Thank you.
Yes, I am. I am gonna have to drive
Thank
you
you,
back.
Victoria.
You're welcome.
Get one photo. Can everybody get
What do we do with these cups?
Oh, you're welcome.